Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullah. Just checking everything's okay and everything's working. Let me just see if I can fiddle about with this. Just checking, is everybody can hear me okay? Is sound fine? Turn the camera around. Am I sideways or am I upside down or what? Okay, let me just check, 1 second. Ooh. Is that better? Is that okay, or is it sideways? Sideways, Abu Muhammad. Better? Okay, excellent. Alhamdulillah. Let me see if I can just make this a bit taller. No. Oh. Okay. So, Bismillah. Right. Just using a slightly different camera this time, using my iPad and using a microphone. So hopefully, inshallah, everybody can hear. It's not too, what's the word? Not too quiet. It's okay, is it? Let's just check if everything's okay. Everything's up and ready. Oh, excellent. So we've got that on. We've got about 7-8 people. So I've just been rushing around trying to get everything set up. So, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad. If I'm too low, please tell me and I'll speak up higher. Hopefully my mic, which is one of these standing ones, well, not standing ones, it's not one of the lapel ones where you clip it on, is good, that you can hear me properly. And obviously I've also using my phone as well. I've got to keep that on charger though, so I can maybe be able to see the questions a lot better as a result with regards to this. So just maybe wait about a minute or so. As we're waiting, hopefully inshallah you've all watched session 3. So you watched session 1 or section 1, whatever you want to say, which was where we discussed the weight of belief, how we approach the discussion of belief in Islam and our purpose of life. Session 2, we looked at the positive arguments for the belief in a creator, belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in session 3, which was released last week, a little bit late unfortunately, Wednesday last week, we went through and we discussed, or the videos that were released was related to those videos related to contentions against belief in the creator, belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those were the 3 sessions that we had. In video or session 3, we looked at 5 specific arguments against belief in the creator. Now sometimes it's maybe a little bit difficult to understand what those arguments are from the atheists. So just really to give a very brief introduction or explanation to some of the contentions, and then maybe brothers can ask any questions or comments in regards to those videos, even the ones that we've done beforehand. So the first one we looked at was what was the first one? Can't remember now, unless somebody can remind me. The first one was multiverse. So we argued, or we mentioned, that one of the reasons for a need for a creator, for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the fact that things are possible beings. What do we mean by possible beings? We mean that they could have been other than what they are now. So we gave an example like a red triangle. So we know that a triangle has to have three sides, but it doesn't have to be red. It could be another possible color. It could be blue, or could be green, yellow, whatever other color that you have. So we said, because you've got a red triangle, you need to ask the question, why is it red as opposed to any other color? Because it's not in the definition of a triangle for it to be red. So you need to have something that has decided or determined it. So in the point about multiverse, what some people try to argue, well, there are infinite number of universes out there. And because there are infinite number of universes, then there are an infinite number of things that have different attributes. This is their argument. This is what we've said. And so we address this by looking at whether you could have an infinite number of finite things or infinite number of universes. And we looked at that question. The second video was about asking whether there is a before the Big Bang. Yeah, I don't know, it may sound a bit weird, but basically the point here is that if we say that time began at the moment of the Big Bang, then can we ask the question what caused the Big Bang? Because asking the question what caused the Big Bang, according to atheists or some atheists, is to imply that there is a prior thing that existed before time. Yeah? So if time started at the Big Bang, asking what caused the Big Bang is implying what was something before the Big Bang. So there is no before, quote unquote, this is what their argument is, because before implies a time before time. Yeah? And so they give this argument about, well, can you ask what is north of North Pole, of the North Pole? So they say, well, you can't ask that question because it's irrational question or illogical question. In the same way, we cannot ask the question, what is the cause of the universe, because you're asking what is before the concept of before. So that was the second video. Third video, we looked at quantum mechanics, and we said that in quantum mechanics they point, or some people point to the fact that things on a quantum level do not exhibit causality, and therefore when we argue, or the claim is that those people that argue for the existence of God assume causality, but on a quantum level there is no causality. So that was another argument that was used. The fourth one was an argument called the fallacy of composition. So we sense things are limited and dependent, but why are we assuming the whole of the universe is limited and dependent? This is what they call fallacy of composition. And the final one was on the problem of evil. Yeah. So if God is all good and all powerful, why does evil exist? Either God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, cannot stop the evil, therefore the creator is not all powerful and therefore not God, or they're saying that the creator is not all good, and if he's not all good, then that cannot be the concept of the creator. So we discussed that point as well. I always found that argument quite weak, to be honest, because it just assumes there's only two attributes. So we might as well dive into the question straight away. So Abu Muhammad Ali has said, so I've got a Pepsi here, and I think the camera reverses the angle. So if you see me drinking it looks like I'm drinking my left hand. It's not, it's in my right hand. It just happens to be reversed. So anyway, so let's look at what Abu Muhammad Ali has said. He said, what is the definition of infinite? Is it correct to say that Allah is infinite being, or Allah has infinite attributes such as He's infinitely powerful? Okay, so there's a few things here, isn't it? Firstly is, what do we mean by infinite? Yeah. So it sounds like we should know what this means, but infinite has it's a mathematical concept in origin. Yeah, it means that there aren't bounds to it. Yeah, and if we look at wa alaikum salam Ayub, by the way, if we look at the in mathematics, this thing called an actual infinite. Yeah, so that means that you have an infinite number of things, like for an infinite number of universes, or an infinite number of numbers as an example, or an infinite number of marbles, as I gave the example in the video. So when we look at this type of idea of infinite, i.e. infinity being made up of parts, then what we're saying is that that's impossible. What we mean by it as a quantifiable infinite. Yeah, so an infinity that is made up of other things. That's impossible. And we gave some examples in regards to that. If brothers and sisters want me to go into the examples, I'm more than happy to go back and we can discuss the examples again. But this is the type of infinity that's impossible. Yeah, logically impossible. So if people say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is infinite, what they actually probably mean is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator, is not bound by limitations. That's one. Yeah, and secondly is what they don't mean is that the creator is a composite of an infinite number of things. Yeah, so that's why we say that the creator is not defined by a shape or a size, not an infinite shape or an infinite size. Rather, the creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is beyond the concept of space or size or shape, beyond the concept of limitations, because by applying limitations, you would be falling into this logical contradiction of an infinite sum of finite things, and that's impossible. So hopefully that's sort of answered it. To be honest, personally, I don't use the term infinite for the creator, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I would say unlimited, beyond the concept of limitations, because limitations is something that we comprehend in our own mind. Okay. Any other questions that brothers have? Hopefully everybody's watched all the videos in session 3. I've noticed actually, because I've been keeping an eye on the views. So we started off with like 300 views. Yeah, alhamdulillah, we had about 400 or so people sign up for the course. So 300 views is pretty good. And then slowly, as the videos, the sessions, number of sessions, the number of views have gone down a little bit. So I know obviously it's a lot of videos to catch up on and keep up with, but that's why we staggered it over 5 weeks as opposed to just doing it, sending them all out in one way. Okay, so there's a question here from Muhammad Umar. Do you define unlimited? So when I define unlimited, we say unlimited means beyond the concept of limitation. So when we look at limits, we can look at limits in a couple of ways. One way is by looking at limits as a quantifiable limit. Yeah, and what do we mean by quantifiable? It means something that's, you can quantify, you can add up to. Yeah, once you add up to something, then whenever you add up to something, you have to have a limited thing. So I'll give you an example of this. In video number 3, we talked about an infinite number of marbles. Yeah, so you've got this infinite pile of marbles. Now, in this infinite pile of marbles, you obviously have an infinite number of marbles. When you cut the marbles into 2 equal piles, so you've got half, yeah, then you've got half of 2 infinities, yeah, or half of infinity. But each pile of marbles must be infinite, because as soon as you bring them back together, they have to be infinite. If you cut them into 4 quarters, and then each quarter, each pile has an infinite number of marbles. So therefore, every fraction or proportion of an infinite sum of finite things must be infinite, must have an infinite number. So what you have is this couple of contradictions here. The first contradiction is a fraction, so a quarter would have the equal amount of marbles as the overall number of marbles. Does that make sense? Is that clear? So maybe just to repeat that point again. It's just as a side point. It's really odd when you do Facebook Live. I'm sure some of the brothers here and sisters have done Facebook Live. But whenever you do Facebook Live, all you see is your face. Yeah. So see your face and maybe some text on the screen. So it's a bit odd when you're trying to answer. Whenever I discuss with people, you can see their eyes, you can see their expression, you can see if they understand. So when I make some points, it's very hard to gauge whether people can understand and appreciate my points. But anyway, let's just repeat that point. You've got an infinite number of marbles. Yeah, you cut them in half. one half has to have an infinite number of marbles, the other half has to have an infinite number of marbles, because when you add them back together, it has to be infinite. But the half would have to equal the overall, yeah? Once you bring them back together, so the half equals the overall. So you have this problem of bigger and smaller quantifiable infinite, or bigger and smaller countable infinite, yeah? Specific point here, countable infinite. So as a result, you got a contradiction with regards to that. And then if you take 3 marbles out of this infinite pile of marbles, have you just decreased the pile of marbles? No, because it remains infinite. Still the same quantity, so it's still the same countable amount, and you've got this 3 marbles. Yeah. So again, another contradiction. Where does this 3 come from if it's not decreased from the overall? And then you also got the other contradiction, which is the fact that you have a fraction. 3 is a fraction of an overall. So if 3 is a fraction of the overall, yeah, and we said every fraction of an infinite has to be infinite, then why isn't this 3, which is a fraction, infinite? Yeah. So there's a lot of contradictions when you apply this concept of an infinite sum of finite things together. It does not make sense. Yeah, it is a contradiction. And we quoted a mathematician, David Hilbert. I can't remember the exact quote, but he basically said that infinity, it cannot be the basis of rational thinking. What it remains as is solely as an idea. Yeah, so it's an idea. It's not something you can apply into the real world. Yeah, you apply it in mathematical concepts. Yeah, or in mathematics, which is abstract. You know, it's not in the real. As soon as you try to apply it into the real world, you fall into these contradictions. So when we say something is limited, something is quantifiable, straight away I know the overall is quantifiable and therefore limited. So when we say the creator is unlimited, then what we're saying is beyond quantifiable. You can't quantify it. Yeah, it's not added to. Yeah, so as a result, we're saying it's beyond limitations. Yeah. Hopefully that's clear. Abu Idris, maybe slowed down for Christmas is coming. Probably the number of views. Maybe. Who knows? Right, okay. Ayub Hussein, if it is possible for a necessary being that was the cause of contingent beings, can't it be equally possible instead of the necessary being, it was contingent being without a cause? Okay, so it's a good question. So we have to understand what we mean by contingent and necessary. We said, and it's a really important point, and this was in video 2 of session 2. We also sort of mentioned it in, rational thinking, which is video 5, I think, in the first session. We said that why do we ask the question, what's the reason behind something? What's the explanation? What's the cause behind something? And we said the reason why we ask this question is when we sense something which is contingent. And what do we mean by contingent? We mean it's a possibility amongst a number of possibilities. And that possibility cannot be explained by itself. Yeah. So going back to that, example that I gave of a red triangle. A red triangle is a possibility. It could be blue or black or whatever other color triangle. It's possible amongst a number of possibilities. Yeah. So when I come across it and I think to myself, well, the triangle does not determine the color, then what determines the color? It's outside of the triangle. So I look for an explanation that's outside of what it is, what it's made up of, which is the triangle or the 3 sides. So I need to explain it from that perspective. Again, we gave the example of a table that's made out of wood. We said, okay, if you've got wood, does that mean you've got a table? No, because wood could be fashioned into anything else, like a wardrobe or a spoon or a chair or whatever, yeah, or plate, wooden plate. So it has a number of possible forms. So the fact that it has that one as opposed to any other one requires an explanation. And that explanation is not self-contained in its material form, what it's made up of. So therefore, and it's not contained within the fact that it's a table, so we look for outside. So we can't say that the creator could be a contingent eternal being, because it doesn't make sense. Because we're still asking the question, why does this possible being, this possibility, this possible thing, why does it have that possibility as opposed to another possibility? So you're still looking for an explanation, and that explanation then requires either it's going to require cause, so that cause will either, or dependency will depend upon something which is also a possible being, or it will depend upon an unlimited being. If it depends upon another possible being, then you get this chain of events, this infinite regression, this infinite number of dominoes, and we said that's impossible. So it has to ultimately rest upon a foundation, an explanation, which is a necessary being. And we said the necessary being has to have a will, has to be one, has to have created, and that is whom we call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right. Okay. So Abu Muhammad Ali's asked the question: if a necessary being exists regardless of the universe, I assume that's going to be, regardless the universe exists or not, then why use the universe as contingent existence to prove a necessary being? So the Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is not dependent upon the universe, but our knowledge of the Creator is dependent upon understanding the universe. Yeah. So whether the universe exists or not, or contingent beings exist or not, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will exist. But how do I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists? Well, I know because I'm a contingent being. I'm limited, finite, independent. And I see around me limited, finite, independent things. So my knowledge of how I come to the conclusion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists comes by looking at the fact that things require things are limited, things are weak, things are needy, things have got specific attributes which could have been other attributes, things have a beginning to their existence, things are regulated by laws and are ordered. All of this makes me understand that there must be a necessary independent creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created all of these things. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not dependent upon contingent, that would be obviously not allowed, yeah. But rather our understanding is dependent upon our understanding of what's existing around us, and the things that exist around us require a maker, a creator, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, I saw the video on quantum physics or quantum mechanics. On what grounds can we say they are contingent? Okay. So that was asked by Ayub Hussein again. So we say they are contingent because we could say two things. One, did they have to have the attributes that they had? That's one thing. Yeah. The second thing that we can say is, could we conceive of them having different attributes? Yeah. So that's another thing that we could say about them. Yeah. So even if I don't sense the fact that something has different attributes, could I even just imagine that it could have a different attributes? Let me give you an example of this. Can I conceive of a possible, a bigger or smaller triangle? Yeah. Now I can conceive of that, and just the fact that I can conceive of it being bigger or smaller doesn't break the definition of it being a triangle. Yeah, it'll still be a triangle. So can I, for example, let me think of another example. Could I conceive of water boiling at 110 degrees Celsius? Yes, I could. Would that necessarily mean that we no longer have water? No, I can still conceive of the possibility that water boils at a higher temperature and still be water. Yeah? So therefore, because I can conceive of that, I will ask the question, why is it like that then? Yeah? Let me contrast this. Can I conceive of a triangle having four sides? No, I can't. So I don't ask the question, why does the triangle have three sides? I say that is true by definition. Yeah, so that's a necessary definition of a circle, of a triangle, that it has three sides. But it's not necessary. I can conceive of it being blue or black or whatever color. Because I can conceive of it being like that and it still be a triangle, then as a result, I would ask, why is it like that? Yeah, what's caused it to be like that? So the same thing with regards to quantum mechanics. We can look at what occurs on the quantum level and say, did it have to be like that? No, it didn't. Could it have been another way? Yes, it could. Could I even conceive of it? Yes, I could conceive of it. Did it have a beginning of its existence? Yes, it does. Does it behave according to certain patterns? Actually, it does behave according to certain patterns. Even though those patterns are probabilistic, they are still patterns that exist. Yeah. So all of these things determine it to be contingent. Yeah. So, i.e., a possible being, a thing that's limited, finite, and dependent. So it's natural then, and inevitable and rational to ask the question: why does it exist in that way as opposed to another way? Yeah. Hopefully that's clear in terms of that answer. Right. If it's not clear, by the way, just follow up, isn't it? You said limited is quantifiable and unlimited is beyond the limited, and thus an attribute of God. Can we say, since finite is quantifiable and infinite is beyond the finite, and thus attribute of God? So I didn't say the unlimited is beyond, and unlimited is thus an attribute of God. I don't know if we can say that necessarily, but what we can say is that the attributes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's existence, is beyond limitations. That's true. Definitely. There are no limits. It's not quantifiable. Means you can't quantify and measure the amount of power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, yeah? Or amount of existence that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. All of these things are beyond the concept of limitations. The existence of the Creator is beyond this concept of limitations. Goes on. So we can say unlimited in that sense. Can we also say, since finite is quantifiable and infinite is beyond the finite, and thus attribute of God? Yeah, but like I said, it goes back to what we mean by infinite, because if we say infinite is a quantifiable infinite, if that makes sense, an addition to infinite, then that is not true, because the concept of an infinite sum of finite things, infinite number of finite things, is impossible, is a logical impossibility. So if we talk about infinity in this sense, we'd have to talk about in a qualitative sense, in the sense of beyond the concept of limits. Yeah? Right. Okay. So Mustasin is added the points about what is a contingent thing by saying ordered, limited, dependent, weak stroke needy, possible existence, they change, has a beginning, can be rearranged as well. Yeah. So I think if we identify any or one of those particular attributes within a thing, then we can say it is limited and dependent and requires an explanation other than itself. If we can, so Abu Muhammad Ali's got another question. If we can ask why the necessary being has this particular attribute as opposed to that attribute, such all-knower versus ignorance, why can't one say a necessary being is contingent being based on this definition of contingency? Let me see if I can understand that point. If we can ask why the necessary being has this particular attribute as opposed to that attribute, such as all-knower versus ignorance. Okay, so when we talk about the necessary attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are talking about those things that the mind comes to and concludes upon about the Creator. So Allah subhanahu, the necessary being has to exist. That's a necessary attribute of the Creator. If the Creator, this necessary being, could have created the universe and then cease to exist, then it's not a necessary being. Yeah, it's not eternal, it's not independent. Yeah, we would ask the question, what caused it to exist and then not to exist? So we say existence is a necessary thing. And we look at some of the other key attributes, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a will, has knowledge, has power, has the capacity to create, etc. All of these things are necessary, necessary attributes for the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, that doesn't mean that they are the only attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, we can only come to a certain number of attributes from our limited mind, because our mind is limited. Yeah. So what we are doing is based upon what we sense of the reality, and we come to certain conclusions about the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we can't come to the like we said last week as well, we cannot conclude definitively on the Yani the existence, what I mean by this is about comprehend the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We cannot do that. Our mind is limited. So, just like somebody knocks on the door, I conclude certain things, yeah? I can conclude that there is somebody behind the door that's knocking on the door. I can conclude that, that there wasn't a knocking before. All of these things. I can conclude that there is something behind the door, and that has the power to do the knocking, and maybe chose to do the knocking. All these things. But I can't conclude beyond that. I don't know if it's a man or a woman, how tall or big they are, what colour eyes they've got. All of that's beyond my capacity. That's why we have revelation. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then tells us beyond the other attributes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, the one who gives mercy, the one who punishes, the one who overpowers, etc. All of these, then we accept what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us. And we don't try to rationalize that, because we can't get to that conclusion from our mind in the first place. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs us, we just simply accept it as it is. Right, okay. Ustad, you said that we can't reach infinity by adding numbers, but how can the life of the hereafter is infinite, even though it starts with the judgment day? Excellent question by Abdullah Ahmed. So, you can't reach infinity, definitely, yeah? Doesn't mean, therefore, that the hereafter is comes to an end. Because something can be finite but unbound, yeah? Finite but unbound. So what does that mean? That means that if I start, as an example, if I start counting from 1, and I go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I can keep counting. And I can keep counting forever. Yeah, so I can keep going on. If we take out, the concept of my life or anything like, time, etc. But I start from 1, I can keep counting forever. However, I will never get to the infinite number, because every number I land upon will be a finite number. So if I get to 1 billion, it'll be 1,000,000,001. A trillion, 1,000,000,001. A squillion, 1,000,000,001. A Google. At a Google and 1. I think Google is a number anyway. So we can keep adding, yeah? We can keep adding to the time. So it's finite but unbound, yeah? Every moment we reach will be a finite number, but we can keep adding plus 1. So we can't get to infinity, but we can talk about this concept of forever, yeah? So the Day of Judgment and the afterlife, we say it carries on forever. But it doesn't mean it exists infinitely, yeah? Because it had a beginning, so it will have. So you have to, even if you talk about human quote-unquote years, you've got 1 year, you've got, in hereafter, 10 years in hereafter. You can keep adding to that number of years, but you'll never get to an infinite number of years, yeah? If that makes sense. Yeah. Hope that makes sense, yeah? So finite but unbound. Okay, Muhammad Ali's come back and he said, granted it that everything in the universe is contingent, but how do you know the entire universe is contingent? Okay, so again it goes, so what is the contention here that is being brought against, theists and believers in God? They're saying that Muslims are saying that the reason why we believe the existence of the Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is because we see one limited dependent thing, a second limited dependent thing, a third limited dependent thing, and therefore the universe is the sum of all existence, i.e. what we sense exists, and the existence that exists are the sum of limited things. Does that make sense? So the universe could be defined as the sum of all limited dependent things. Yeah? Then they'll say, but then why are you saying the universe as a whole becomes unlimited and independent? Yeah, and he requires it is dependent. Why are you saying the universe as a whole becomes is also limited and also dependent? Because you're making this problem or this fallacy. This is what they claim. This claim is called the fallacy of composition, which is saying that 1 limited, 2 limited, 3 limited, the overall must also be limited. But they're saying, well, it could be the case that the overall is not limited. And in that video on Fallacy of Composition, it's only a short video, about 8 minutes long or so, I gave the example of Bertrand Russell, who had a debate with a person called Copleston, who is a Jesuit priest. And in that, the priest is arguing about, things are limited contingent beings, and therefore the universe is a sum of all limited contingent beings. Therefore the universe is a contingent being. He said, Russell, who's an atheist, famous philosopher from the last century, he said, look, every human being has a mother. Does that mean the collective of humanity has a mother? Yeah. So he's saying this is a fallacy of composition. And so, as a result, he's saying you're making the same problem. You're trying to say this about the universe, that every limited thing is dependent upon something else. Then why are you saying that about the universe as a whole? So that's the argument in not quite of a nutshell, but that's what their argument is. Now, reason why we still say the universe is a contingent being is for a few things. Yeah. Firstly and foremostly, that when we said a contingent, why do we ask the question, what caused something? We said because we sensed it's limited, it has specific attributes that could be other attributes, it has a beginning to its existence, all these things, yeah, that we mentioned about a contingent being. So if we identify something in the future, yeah, that we've never come across, but it has limitations, it has specific attributes, but could be other attributes, had a beginning to its existence, even though I've never come... Assalamu alaikum. Sorry about that. Unfortunately, the live stream just switched off on my laptop, on my iPad, so I had to quickly reconnect with my phone now. So hopefully, inshallah, we can get back on track with regards to that. So yeah, it's just, I thought, oh my god, it's just switched off on the thing. Technology, anyway. Qadarullah. Yeah, it's within the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So where was I? Talking about fallacy of composition. I don't know if I need to turn the camera. I've got this turn the camera again. Oh god. Don't know if my camera will turn. Is that a better, Abu Muhammad? I'll wait for Abu Muhammad to tell me if it's better. We had 17 people watching as well. SubhanAllah, man. That's anyway. 1 sec. Right. So anyway. Yes, it's better. Excellent. Alhamdulillah. Okay then. Sorry, man. So apologies for that, brothers. Like I said, the live stream just switched off. Maybe Mark Zuckerberg didn't like what was going on. But anyway, we're on it. We're back on, inshallah. So we were talking about, I'll probably afterwards, Abu Muhammad will take the two live videos and put them back together again. So we were talking about, anyway, before it switched off, the discussion about the fallacy of composition. And we said in the fallacy of composition, yes, we were concluding, we said that it's not correct argument against what we're saying, because when we identify something is limited, finite, dependent, has specific attributes, didn't always exist, had a beginning to its existence, then we will ask the question, what caused it? Yeah, or what's it dependent upon? Or what is the explanation for its existence? This is what we're going to ask. So we're going to ask this question. So even if I come across something brand new, I've never seen it before in my life, yeah, some new reality, if I can identify it has a beginning, or, maybe it has a beginning, it has specific attributes, but could be other attributes, it has limitations which are quantifiable, it could be rearranged in another way, anything, if I can conclude any of these matters, then I will ask the question, what is the explanation for its existence? What is it dependent upon? What is its cause? So we can use the same process when identifying, looking at the universe. We can say the universe has a beginning to its existence. Yeah, we can prove that through the concept of an infinite regress being an impossibility. Secondly, we can say that the universe is limited. We can prove that because we said an infinite sum of finite things is impossible. So the sum of finite things will always equal to a finite thing. No matter how much I add, I'll always add and get to a finite quantity. So the space, the universe as a whole, and space will always be finite. Yeah, so it's not going to be infinite. The universe, yeah, because the universe is the sum of all limited things, or the sum of the space that exists. The space is quantifiable, so the overall will be quantifiable. So therefore the universe would also be limited in its size. The universe has certain attributes that could have been other attributes as well, and the universe could have been arranged in a different way. I've identified all of these 4 things. I only had to identify actually one of these things, but I can identify all of these 4 things. As a result, I can say, what is the explanation behind why the universe exists? And is that explanation dependent upon something which is limited, or will it be dependent upon something that's unlimited and independent? If it's limited, then it'll be dependent. If it's dependent, you've got a problem of infinite regression. Domino's example. Or it has to be independent. Yeah, that's the only possible way to explain the existence of limited dependent things. Therefore, it must be unlimited, necessary being the creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, so all we have to do is identify the universe as a whole has a beginning, its attributes, etc., etc. We can then determine that it's a contingent being, and because it's a contingent being, therefore there must be a cause behind its existence, or it's dependent upon something else. Yeah, so that's the first thing. The second way is, even in the example that Bertrand Russell gave about, every human being has a mother, but humanity as a whole doesn't have a mother. Well, okay, fine. Granted, we cannot explain the cause behind humanity as a whole being a mother, but what we can say is that the humanity as a whole is a product of limited finite dependent beings. And therefore the humanity as a whole is not going to suddenly become independent, yeah, unlimited, yeah, infinite, eternal. Humanity as a whole is still a product of limited beings. Therefore the whole will still be limited and dependent. The question still will remain, who caused humanity to exist? Yeah, humanity does not become independent simply when you add them together. So those 2 arguments demonstrate. So the universe obviously is still a product of the limited finite dependent beings that exist within it. That's what the universe is, the sum of all limited things. So it's still limited. It's not going to be suddenly magically unlimited and infinite in that respect. Right, okay. Muhammad Umar has said, unlimited is also a irrational concept, isn't it? Just like infinite regression is an impossibility. Well, obviously, when we talk about the creator, we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unlimited, isn't it? Yeah, so we're saying in this context, beyond limitations, beyond what is quantifiable. So this concept of having something that has to exist by necessity to explain the existence of universe and limited independent things, and that existence of this necessary being is independent, eternal, and also unlimited, is correct. So it's not the fact, it's when we try to say something's unlimited but in a quantifiable way, that's the irrational problem. Abdullah Ahmed has asked, Ustad, my question may not be related directly to the session, but how can we tell the true source of information? Because I'm always worried of that, because we always hear and read different ideas about everything, even among Muslims. Okay, it's a good question, and I'll address it because obviously we sort of address it in the first session anyway about thinking and the epistemology. I mean, really, when you look at any, maybe a better way to look at this, how do I understand I'm a critical thinker? I'm able to, evaluate ideas, yeah? Or am I just simply accepting it from one position? Now, the way to understand something critically is to understand the opposing argument to your argument. If you can understand how they oppose your, what are the arguments against your position or a particular position, and then you can understand the weaknesses in those arguments, then you can say that actually I'm objective and I'm a critical thinker regards to this, yeah? In fact, personally, I wouldn't recommend it for all the brothers here and sisters here, but generally, personally, when I look at, I've done a few debates on proof of God and the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what I try to do is when I enter the debate, I want to be able to debate the position stronger than the atheists themselves. So if I was an atheist, if I was in the position of the atheist and I wanted to argue against belief in a creator, I would want to argue it better than them. If I can argue it better than them, then I know straight away that I'm going to be able to address all of his arguments and ideas because therefore I understand the truthfulness of the position that I hold on to. So to become critical in your thinking, when we mean by critical means being able to evaluate, then really it's to understand the opposing argument and therefore being able to understand why the opposing argument has weaknesses within it. Okay, question on the problem of evil. Why did a merciful God created people who he knew would fall the test of life and enter hellfire? Couldn't it be better if he didn't create them so they didn't have to suffer punishment in hellfire? Okay, look, there's two things here. Firstly is understanding the question of why did the Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, create human beings and therefore know that certain human beings would fail and enter hellfire? That's one question. The second question is, did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creating of them, even though he knew that they were going to fall into hellfire, force them to be in hellfire? Yeah. So there's two separate issues. And what tends to happen is people conflate the two together. Yeah. So as an example, if if there was a child, a baby, and it was next to, a fire, yeah, or, you give a child a ball, a baby a ball in its hand, what's the child's natural action it's going to do? It's going to take the ball and it's going to put it in its mouth, isn't it? Yeah. So I know that's going to occur. Now, my knowledge of doing that doesn't determine the action of the baby. Yeah. Similarly, if the baby puts a hand in the fire and I knew the child was going to do that, it's not me who determined the child to do that. Yeah. So pre-knowledge or foreknowledge does not define or determine a person's individual action. Yeah, that's the first thing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knowing that certain people will enter hellfire does not mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused them to enter hellfire. Yeah. The first part of the question, why did the Creator create? Well, at the end of the day, we don't really know these answers. We don't have, from our perspective, we have to just simply accept that that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says within the Quran, that we are here, we have been created with a free will, we have been created to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to recognize our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, why would the Creator do that? Wallahu alam. Yeah, Allah knows best, isn't it? We don't really know these things. But that doesn't undermine the argument. That doesn't undermine the existence of the Creator and existence of Islam. Just because I don't know from the perspective of the Creator why the Creator created, doesn't mean that therefore the Creator didn't create us. Yeah, I don't look at it from top down, na'udhu billah, yeah. Rather, I look at it from my reality, which is what I can sense around me, the universe, and then I conclude that there is a Creator. That's the way we do it. The problem with a lot of people who try to reject the existence of the Creator, whether it's from the problem of evil argument or from, why did the Creator do X, Y, Z, or it's from the point of view of the Creator. We're limited beings, yeah? We're trying to superimpose our limited understanding and concepts, our framework, upon the Creator and then retrospectively apply that upon creation. It's impossible because our limited mind cannot comprehend past, present and future. Yeah, we cannot comprehend the whole of the entire universe, yeah, or even beyond the universe, whatever exists from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. We can't understand these things, and yet we're trying to produce a judgment. We're producing a judgment based upon ignorance, yeah, and it's wrong. What we should do is base our judgments upon what we know, and what we know is that things are limited, finite, independent, and they cannot exist on its own accord. Therefore, there must be a Creator who's unlimited, independent, who chose to create, that exists. Yeah. So Mustahsin Sharif, what about this point? A thing is contingent if it lacks attributes of consciousness, power, knowledge, will, because the question How can something which lacks all of this exist by itself? Let me try and read that question again. A thing is contingent if it lacks the attributes of consciousness, power, knowledge, will. Yeah, okay, so to a certain extent we can say that. Yeah, so, you know, for example, the ball did not choose to roll down the hill. It's compelled to roll down the hill according to the laws of nature. Yeah, so, you know, things that don't have choice and are compelled, and what compels them is not necessary in itself. Yeah, so gravity doesn't have to exist, by the way. Yeah, so this idea that gravity is not a necessary thing. Yeah, it's not a necessary component of the universe. It exists, yes, but there is a possibility that gravity could not have existed. So as a result, it's not the gravity that's, you know, what compels the ball to roll down the hill is not you know, gravity per se. Yeah, it's the explanation from a materialistic point of view. It's a mechanistic explanation, but the mechanistic explanation doesn't give us a foundational explanation. So let me just give you a brief explanation, or explain that point a bit further. Why does the ball roll down the hill? Because obviously we say gravity. Okay, why does gravity exist? Because mass in space exert gravitational force. Why does that occur? Because it bends space. Why does it bend space? Well, because it's just the nature of space. Well, why is it the nature of space? Do you see the point? Every explanation requires another explanation. Yeah? So everything that we are explaining in terms of why the ball travels down the hill is not an explanation in itself. Yeah? It is simply shifting an explanation to something else, which then shifts it to something else, that shifts it to something else. There has to be a foundational explanation, which is a necessary being, a creator, who chose for space to be bent by mass in the universe, that creates a gravitational force that results in a ball rolling down the hill. There has to be an explanation. That's the ultimate explanation, i.e. a necessary, independent, unlimited being. The ball, therefore, didn't choose it didn't decide to roll down the hill. So therefore, it is ultimately under laws and regulations which have been caused by the creator. So in that sense, yes, we can say that something that lacks the attribute of consciousness, power, knowledge, will is also a contingent being from that perspective. Yeah. If God is all good and all powerful, why can he not stop rapists or murders? Yeah. So it's a good, and obviously this is the popular problem of evil argument, isn't it? Yeah. Now, if you think about it, I don't think I mentioned it in the actual video, but it's also another point that I was going to mention, but I'll mention it here anyway. If the Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, only allows people to perform good actions and prevents them from performing evil actions, then that means the only possible type of world that could be created is one where human beings do not have free will. Yeah? So for people to have free will, the ability to choose, they must be allowed to choose and enact evil. Yeah, it's a really important point. So as a result of this, you know, yes, okay, rape, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could stop the rape, could stop any murders from taking place, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows it to happen because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the free choice. But at the same time, as said, on the Day of Judgment, you're going to face X, Y, Z. So that's one type of argument that's used, yeah? It's not the only argument. I also use other arguments, which is saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not just distinguished by being all good and all powerful, but also all wise, all knowledgeable, the judge, yeah, the punisher, the reward, you know, the one who also gives that reward, etc. So therefore, we don't just apply the concept of, you know, two attributes, that's it. So from that perspective, there may be good reasons. We might not be able to understand it, but there may be good reasons why evil exists, i.e. that achieves a greater good. Yeah. So therefore, the best possible world may be to allow, where the greatest good is achieved, may be to allow evil to exist. From our perspective, we don't know, because we're limited beings who can only think in a very linear past, present, future perspective. We cannot understand the future. We haven't got total comprehensive knowledge of everything that exists. So therefore, we have to simply accept from what we do know, which is that things are limited, finite, dependent, that there must be a creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, those things that, like the problem of evil, are based upon what we don't know. They're arguments from ignorance, yeah? And therefore, they are therefore false arguments. Basically, we say, well, why did God do this? Well, I don't know why God did that. Well, therefore, God doesn't exist. Well, that's not an argument, yeah? That's just simply saying you're ignorant on this particular issue. I don't know what time it is, actually. Oh, let me check on here. Okay, so it's about an hour. We can explain the cause of the universe from a necessary being. However, it does not specify who created the universe, how it was created, or what it was created from. Isn't it just a causal explanation devoid of any meaningful mechanics? I'm struggling with that word. Mechanistic, I was trying to say, but it's mechanics, he said here. That are the substances of such an explanation. Aren't we simply explaining one mystery with another mystery? Right, okay. So, what did we say? We said that even when we give a mechanistic explanation to things that exist within the universe, whether that's boiling a point of water, why water flows, why does a ball roll down the hill, we don't actually give a foundational explanation. So we're not providing a foundational explanation for it. Rather, all we're doing is shifting the explanation to something else, which then shifts to something else, which then shifts to something else. We cannot have an infinite regress, therefore we need to have a foundational explanation, and that foundational explanation therefore is the creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, so a mechanistic explanation does not provide a meaningful explanation either. Yeah, it's really important. It doesn't actually give me a foundation to understand why the universe or contingent limited dependent beings exist in the first place. So that's the first thing. Secondly, even if I don't understand the reasons behind something that exists, or the mechanics of its existence, or the mechanics of its how it causes its effect, doesn't mean that it doesn't cause its effect. I'll give you an example of this. Yeah, paracetamol, yeah, which is analgesic, which means it's a painkiller. Scientists still don't really understand how paracetamol reduces temperature. Antipyretic, yeah, drug reduces temperature. They don't know how it reduces pain. So it doesn't mean because they don't know how something exists, or they haven't got a mechanistic explanation for how it causes its effect, doesn't mean that therefore they don't recognize that paracetamol causes the effect of reduced pain and reduced temperature. Yeah, I don't know what paracetamol is in America. What is paracetamol in America? Does it have a different name? Yeah, in England we call it paracetamol. Acetal. I can't remember the chemistry name for it. But yeah, so therefore, just because I can't explain something doesn't necessarily mean that that thing does not exist, one, and does not have a causal relationship. If somebody can find out what the chemical name of paracetamol is and post it on here, that'd be great. Yeah, so similarly, if I can't explain, as an example, the mechanistic explanation of how Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa, what brushstrokes he used, what, paint did he use, what was the composition of the paint. If I can't explain any of these things, doesn't mean that I cannot know that the painting of Mona Lisa had a cause, behind it, and therefore that required a painter. Right. Somebody said, right, okay, yes, so things which are compelled by something which has a will. Yeah, nicely explained. Jazakallah khair. Wa alaikum salam, Sadiq. Does contingency contradict the fine-tuning argument? No, it doesn't contradict the fine-tuning argument. Contingency basically says that the attributes that exist within the universe must have been caused ultimately by a necessary being. That's the ultimate argument of a contingency argument. Now, fine-tuning argument is that the universe is finely tuned for life, for existence and life. Therefore, it does make sense that if you add the two together, that if things that exist require a creator to bring them into existence with the attributes that they have, and that these attributes happen to also be finely tuned for the existence of life, then both these confirm the fact that a creator who has a will and intelligence created the universe. Mustasin said the question we should ask is, reverse it, define evil. Why is it evil? Does evil go with atheism? So I think that's a question about problem of evil. It's mentioned in the 5th video where we talk about the different problems with the argument of the problem of evil. One of the problems with this argument is that presupposes good and evil can be known from the mind. When you start to ask what is evil, like for example, say, oh, why was there a hurricane or tsunami that killed so many people? Well, is a tsunami evil? Yeah, it's not really evil, is it? Yeah, same thing when we talk about a lion that attacks, a pride of lions and kills the cubs of that lion, of that new pride that they've taken over. It's not evil, it's just what it's doing. So, these things, good and evil, when we start taking them away out of the anchorage of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so we talk about good and evil away from talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the revelation, then we have no anchor for good or evil. We just talk about events. We're not really talking about good or evil. Good or evil can only be comprehended and understood when we understand it from the point of view that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has determined things which are good and determined things which are evil, and has given us revelation to determine that. From an atheistic, materialistic point of view, there is no such thing as good and evil. Why? Because the universe came from nothing, by nothing, for no reason, and randomly assembled itself into a way which we exist. That's it. These are just events. So it's not good or evil. They're just events that are taking place within the universe. And also I mentioned another point, which is that, from a materialistic point of view, we can't even say that we have free will. Yeah, we even say that we choose. So if we can't choose from an atheistic point of view, a materialistic point of view, then we can't turn around and say, well, such and such person did an evil action. Yeah. Okay, Abdullah Ahmed has said, empiricism science always evolves. I think it must be empirical science, always evolves. Every time we discover new things, so what is the limit of depending on it when we are trying to find the truth? So look, empirical science, you're right, is always evolving, but empirical science will only ever be able to discover something which is measurable. Yeah? Measurable, really important point. If it's measurable, it means it's quantifiable. If it's quantifiable, then it cannot be unlimited, but has to be limited. If it's limited, then it's going to be dependent, and we're going to ask the question, what is it dependent upon? So no matter what they say when it comes to the issue, some people, atheists, will say, we will discover something in the future, and this discovery in the future will determine the universe, will explain why the universe exists, and we don't need the explanation of God. Well, no, hold on. Science and empiricism, i.e. what we experience, will only ever discover something which is limited and finite and dependent. It will never be able to determine something outside of those three things. So as a result, science will only discover something which requires an explanation by itself as well. Yeah. Something else that requires an explanation, and something else which requires an explanation. Science will never be able to discover something which is unlimited, independent, eternal, etc. These will just be assumptions. Therefore, because we're saying from a logical point of view that an infinite regress is impossible, an actual infinite is impossible, then therefore there must be a unlimited, independent creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Things require an explanation is slightly a different version of the contingency argument. There's loads of different versions of contingency argument, but they're all roughly the same thing, or similar. Tsunamis and earthquakes are good for the environment, studies have shown. Yeah, true. Like volcanoes, I give the example in video 5 about how although volcanoes might cause loss of life and death, but also volcanoes fertilize the land, which allows crops and plants to grow. So, in the long term, you could argue that actually having volcanoes is good for the earth. These Mustasin has said these atheists are idiots. Well, we don't condone that type of language on our course. We don't want to isolate people by calling them particular names. Yeah. Mustasin also said, OMG, atheists think we have free will. Yeah, that's right. Atheists do think we have free will. Atheists can't say that we have free will. This is really important. Maybe to explain, but I think I explain it obviously in video 5 as well. If the mind, which is the basis of our choosing, is simply a product of materialistic components of neurons and chemicals and neurotransmitters, and those things are simply components of physical laws, and those physical laws just happen to come about because the universe exploded in a particular way, yeah, then everything that you make as a decision, yeah, is not really a decision that you're making. It's your neurons firing in a particular way, unconscious neurons firing in a particular way, which makes you do a particular action, but you're not choosing to do it. You just got the illusion that you're choosing to do it. Yeah, does that make sense? Please, if it doesn't make sense, I'll repeat the point. Yeah, but if you adopt a materialistic explanation for why the mind exists, yeah, how we think, that it's just purely from the material around us, then you'd have to deny free will, because our thinking process is simply a product of our brain. Our brain is simply a product of the physical components of the universe, and these physical components of the universe follow certain laws that we did not choose, and therefore are imposed upon our brain, and therefore those things that are imposed upon our brain happen to make us choose one way as opposed to another way. So Mustasin has said, okay, but they say, I don't know what they say. Maybe he's going to write the rest of the point. We go to that. Free will evolved. Like even if they say free will evolved, yeah, what are they trying to say? They're not. How do they understand? How do they say you make a decision? Yeah, they're saying you make a decision because, neurons are firing in a particular order, yeah, which then, creates you to do a particular set of actions, yeah. So it's the brain that fires, or the neurons in your brain that fires in a particular order, yeah, that causes you to do the action. Yeah, is that we sort of agree upon that point? Chemical signals called neurotransmitters and electrical signals called action potentials on the neurons. That's what's causing it. Okay, so what caused them? Yeah, what was it that caused these neurons to fire in a particular way? Was it other materialistic forms, other materialistic explanations for it? Well, yes, that's what they're saying, because they're saying that there's only a materialistic explanation for the brain. So, okay, so what causes those things? Other materialistic explanations. What caused those things? Other materialistic explanations. So as a result, the only way they can explain human beings, think, is by materialistic explanations, which means that you did not choose to do an action. You are compelled to do an action. Yeah, you just have the illusion of choice, and that prediction of you doing the action, that determinism of you doing that particular action, was determined from when? From the moment of the Big Bang. Yeah, so the fact that you're watching this was determined 13.78 billion years ago. Yeah, because everything else, it's just like a chain of events, isn't it? Knocked over one domino, the rest of the dominoes fall over in a deterministic sequence. This is what they say. So if you adopt this position, you can't say murder is evil. It's morally wrong, because the person didn't choose to murder or rape or kill or steal or whatever. He was determined from the moment of the Big Bang. Yeah. And even then, how do you determine a moral difference and moral difference between a rock which happened to exist by random chance and a human being who also happened to exist by random chance as well? Yeah. So this problem of evil argument against a belief in the Creator, which results in a conclusion, according to them, atheists, that there is no God, actually refutes the idea that there is morality in the first place, and therefore refutes their own argument. It's a self-refuting argument. Mustasin has said, but that determinator must be chosen, willed it. What determinator? Yeah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala determined the universe, that's very agreed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala determined us to have free will. That's the only actual explanation why we have free will, is to say that a creator exists who chose to give us the ability to choose. That's the only way to really explain consciousness and free will. Ask an atheist, how can something be determined without someone choosing, willing it? Yeah, that's right, but they will say that when they say determined here, they're just saying that it's like dominoes fall over in a sequence. Everything will fall. It's all determined. The last one will fall when the first one is knocked over. Yeah, it's inevitable. So they're saying that everything that in your brain that you choose is inevitable. Yeah, that your choice is just simply the physical laws interacting with each other, and that's it. Right, okay, I think we have slightly come to an end of the questions. I know we had that break and we had a good set of questions beforehand. Yeah, so unless there's a couple of questions, Abu Muhammad's gone quiet, but I think Abu Muhammad's there. Okay, so unless we've got any more questions, inshallah we will wrap it up there. Hopefully, inshallah, what we'll do is we'll join the two halves of these live videos together, put them up on the Facebook group. If you haven't signed up for the Facebook group, sign up for the Facebook group. You'll get the first 3 sessions. The first session is the importance of belief. Second session is positive arguments for the existence of the creator. The third session, which is what generally we're discussing, the live Q&A based upon that, is what we're discussing today, is the contentions against belief in the creator. There's 15 videos there. There's over, I think it's about almost 3.5 hours worth of content that's free, but it's all short. So it's not like you're watching 3 hours in one go. Some of them are like 8 minutes long, some of them 10 minutes long. You can watch it, on your way to work or whatever it is, in the car, on the bus, have a quick scan through them, have a watch of them. So, it's in short positions. And these 2 sessions, Session 2 and Session 3, when you add them together, you have a very strong, powerful, cogent argument for the existence of a creator. Wallahu alam, in my opinion, yeah, that there must definitely be a creator. We've looked at it from different angles, yeah, from the angle of quantum mechanics to, problem of evil, to the Big Bang, fallacy of composition. We've looked at all these different angles, and we've said actually all of their contentions are, null and void, are invalid. And the only valid position that we have when we look at all of the arguments is that there must be a creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is, these 3 sessions, has come to the conclusion that a creator exists. The next 2 sessions, so session number 4 will be coming out soon. It's not going to come out tomorrow, but it will come out either Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll be talking about the need for messengers, the need for prophets and messengers. So this will be session 4 that will be coming out. So we will talk about Fitrah, yeah, and we'll look at the question whether Fitrah can be understood from the mind, or is it just understood from the Quranic text and the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, yeah. So we're going to look at it from that perspective. That what is the fitrah. We're also going to look at this question of morality. Can the morality be known from the mind or not? Or do we need revelation? So this is really important as well. So this session will come, and the final one will be looking at the evidences for the Quran to be the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, giving some objective criteria for this as well, inshallah. So yeah, Mustasin said all different angles pointing to the same direction. Definitely true. Abdul Rahman has joined us. I think it's slightly a little bit late, but let me see if it's read his point out comment. More importantly, on atheism, there is no such thing as making an intellectual argument, because as a mere carbon structure, you do not make an arrangement by choice. It is merely response to physical stimuli. So basic atheism isn't even in position, intellectual and morally bankrupt at its finest. Yeah, very true. Mustasin says refute deism. Well, we've refuted deism, or deism. Yeah, deism. Just for those brothers who might not know, It means where a creator created the universe but does not interfere within the universe. But we refuted that. We refuted it in video number three, in session 2, where we said that every attribute within the universe, every contingent being, requires a fundamental explanation at every moment in time. Yeah. So for every action that takes place within the universe, there needs the ultimate explanation for why it exists the way it does is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's one key argument. In session 4, however, we do look at this question about why is it that we look for a message, a communication from the Creator, which also helps to refute deism as well. So that's very good, Insha Allah, in terms of refuting that point regards to this. So Abu Muhammad, Jazakallah khair for the Q&A. Jazakallah khair, Abu Muhammad Ali, for helping out so much for this course and event. Insha Allah, I will leave it there. If there's any further questions or points that brothers want to raise, go to the Facebook group. If you've not signed up for the Facebook group, sign up for the Facebook group. Put your questions there. Inshallah, I will try to get the answers to you as soon as possible. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.